register? No? Okay, so take 2 of those for that. Yeah. Who else? Shaarey. Aaron. Yeah, Jocelyn. And I'm just going to check. Hang on. Let me see. I only have a bunch actually. There's a couple of them. Well, I can. That's true. I guess I have 6. Correct.
Left is here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, correct. Howard's right. Howard, you're right.
Yes, as compared to being wrong.
Okay, correct. You are correct. Esaina el Esaenai el Heharim, Me'ayin Yavo Ezri. Ezri Me'im Adonai, Osei Shamayim Va'aretz. Ezri Me'im Adonai, Osei Shamayim Va'aretz. Al yitein lamod raglecha, al yanum shomrecha. Hine lo yanum velo yishan, shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha yad yeminecha. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha al yad yeminecha. Yom ha-shemesh lo yakeka ve'yareach balayla. Adonai yishmorcha mikora, yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzedcha uvoecha, me'ata ve'ad olam. Adonai yishmor tzedcha uvoecha, me'ata ve'ad olam. Ha-mekomo yavo v'shalom. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you everyone else who cannot be with us here at the Shaarey Zedek Cemetery for tuning in to the live broadcast of our service as we have gathered together, family, friends, and a community, to honor and to say goodbye to Gilbert Hecht, Gedalia ben Avraham Halevi Ve'eta, the son of Yetta and Albert Hecht, Zichronam Livracha, of blessed memory. Gilbert passed away Tuesday, the 22nd day in the Hebrew month of Kislev. He was 81, just a few weeks shy of his 82nd birthday. As is keeping with Jewish tradition and custom, we open with the chanting of a psalm, in this case Psalm 121, known in Hebrew as Shir Lama'alot, a song for ascending. I turn my eyes to the mountains, from where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, from God, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way, your guardian will not slumber. You see, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your protection, your guardian at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm, God will guard your life. God will guard your going and coming now and forever. May Gilbert go unto God in peace. Hatsur tamim, Paulo kichol racha mishpat, elemun ave navel, tzadik v'yashar hu. Tzadik ataronai la'amidu la'achayot, asher b'yadcha b'garon kol ruchot, chalila lecha zichron l'imichot. V'hiyu na'inech v'rachamim aleinu fekuchot, ki lecha adon ha'rachamim v'haslichot. Adonai natan v'Adonai lekach, Yehi Shem Adonai mevorach. V'hu rachum yichaber avon v'lo yashchid, v'hirba l'ashiv apo v'lo yirko chamato, v'yashov ha'afar al haaretz she'haya, v'haruach tashuv el ha'elohim asher netana. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. May our beloved soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal, and may God send comfort to those who mourn and grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow. When I met with the family the other night, we were talking about how Gilbert had expressed that he didn't want anyone to talk very much at all at the service, and as a result it started to snow just as we've begun, which is like kind of a symbol that we should not carry on too much. But we are here to show the greatest respect Jewish tradition has to offer, to accompany a loved one to his final resting place, and to celebrate his life, his achievements, his accomplishments, his legacy, what he stood for throughout his life. And for Gilbert Hecht, those pillars, those virtues, are very much worth discussing. We promise Gilbert not to go on at length. But first, an acknowledgement of Gilbert's family, the people who mourn him, who are in grief, who survive him after his passing. His sister-in-law Roz, his nieces and nephews and their families, Albert and Sharon, Jocelyn, Evelyn and Chris, Jacob and Jackson, Aaron and Fay Ray, Yvette and Natalie, Arnold, Deborah, Michael and Lisa, Jaden, Rhonda and Paul, Daniel, Ayala, Meira, Sarah, and Akiva. Gilbert was predeceased by his parents, Albert and Yetta, and by his siblings, Vivian, Jerry, and Manuel. Zichronam livracha, all of blessed memory. In a moment, we are going to hear eulogies from family members, Albert, Jocelyn, Evelyn, and Aaron. By way of introduction, I just wanted to mention a few things that I've come to learn about Gilbert Hecht. A big guy with a big beard, who one time actually did pose as Santa Claus, intentionally. And like that mythic, magical character, was himself quite magical in the way he was kind and generous. I'm sure there are people here who remember being on the receiving end of Gilbert the Candyman and one of his many gifts of handfuls of candy. He was not shy at all. In fact, Gilbert was quite the opposite. Personable, friendly, outgoing, and curious. He genuinely cared about getting to know people, made them feel welcome by asking them possibly more questions that they'd expect or want, and listening to all of their answers. Gilbert was also a man who knew how to make up his own mind. Some may call him stubborn. He loved jazz, the Blue Bombers and the Winnipeg Jets, trips all over the world, the casino. He was a history buff, quite knowledgeable, who had an insatiable appetite for learning, for reading. He'd watch the History Channel, the Discovery Channel, never anything frivolous, always something that he could learn something else, another fascinating story of the world, of different cultures, faraway places, different people, or stories of the past. As you all know, he was a collector, and one of the many things he collected were books. One of his favorite topics, Israel and the history of Judaism. He worked for over 20 years with CRA, and as a colleague and employee, he was known for trying to add a little bit of fun to the workplace, to scenarios. He liked to joke around, create a little mischief, make life unboring. This is how Albert put it when we spoke. Every once in a while he'd get carried away, cross the line, but he was quick with an apology, never meaning any harm, always wanting just to lighten the mood. Before his 2-decade stint at CRA, he worked for the Golden Company as a shipper-receiver, the perfect job for someone who is obsessed with trinkets and collectibles. I like to imagine Gilbert the way he was described at one point when I met with the family, when he had long hair, a leather jacket, and rode a motorcycle, a 62 Suzuki. But I think, unlike that motorcycle, but probably more like his old car, his 65 Galaxy 500 that was white and which he intentionally painted bright orange, that was actually Gilbert. A word that we maybe take for granted, but when we use it properly, can't really apply to that many people, but it applies to Gilbert like his old car. He was unique. There really weren't any Gilbert Hechts before him, and there won't be any Gilbert Hechts after him. For Gilbert, he really relished his role as an uncle, a true uncle. And we will hear from his family to the extent of the personal connections he made with so many family members. And that being an uncle starts with being a brother. For his family, he delivered throughout his life, time and time again, the ultimate mitzvah of care, of unconditional love. For his siblings, for Vivian and her family, a special rapport with his nephew Arnold, always taking him for rides in the car, with his niece Deborah, always the first to call and offer words of encouragement and support in phone conversations, to boost esteem and confidence, and of course to remind her not to eat just peanut butter. Caring about them, caring about others. The story of what happened when his brother Jerry passed away an untimely death in 1981, tragically, speaks volumes about Gilbert's character. After that happened, Gilbert spent time shuttling back and forth between his mother, Yetta's house, and his sister-in-law, his newly widowed sister-in-law, Roz's house, and then essentially never left Roz's house, living there for over 40 years, his only move from the basement to a room upstairs. That is as unique a relationship as I've ever seen or heard of in my life. It was his way of honoring his brother Jerry, and it spoke to devotion, to loyalty, to love, and all the things that families should but don't always have. Certainly Gilbert did. Maybe it started when he was young, growing up in the North End on Cathedral, when he lost his own father at the age of when he was just 13. He knew about the importance of families sticking together through thick and thin, no matter how thick the thick got. In that role, he did his best to take Michael to baseball and football games, and there was a story that came out when we were together that one time Michael asked him to throw the ball pretty hard, and he did, and it ended up with Gilbert rushing Michael to the hospital, and Michael with stitches. As a result of this inseparable bond that he shared with his sister-in-law, Roz, they traveled throughout the world together, so many places. Vegas 5 times, a highlight, but also a memorable trip to the Dominican Republic, trip to Palm Springs, visits to Israel, a bond truly unlike any other. Wherever Gilbert went, you can be sure he'd do a lot of shopping for the oddities and collectibles he treasured so much and became known for. This actually goes back to that childhood home on Cathedral in a special room in the basement that I was told was called the Voodoo Room, that had a gold combination lock on the door and contained shrunken heads, a mounted wolf's head, numerous lava lamps, umpteen posters, just some of the things that Gilbert collected from his many travels and highlighting his interests. Gilbert's essence, though, was not in the things he collected, but in the relationships that he made, the lives he touched, the people he inspired through his boundless kindness and generosity. He just had this unbelievable and unique sense of duty to other people. When there were friends in the hospital or relatives in the Sharon home and Simpkins Center, it was Gilbert's voice that could be heard in the family saying, "We really need to go visit that person. Let's go see him. Let's go see her." And then they would, making long drives, always to see family. In his role as an uncle, he truly embraced not only his nieces and nephews, but also his great-nieces and his great-nephews. Even until his final days, he would always begin conversations shifting the focus from him to them, how they were doing, what they were up to. There was one memorable story Albert shared with me about Gilbert insisting
that he make a trip to see Aaron play baseball. As much as he loved watching sports on TV, nothing could capture the thrill of watching his great-nephew play ball. Albert, of course, wouldn't take him, but Evelyn stepped up. And for someone who probably would do a lot, most of us would do a lot of complaining. I'm in pain, it's too difficult. Gilbert was quite the opposite. And actually, like his truly adventurous spirit, made the trek. As I've said, I didn't know Gilbert like some of the people who are about to speak. And I know it'll be a true honor, as it has been for me, to talk about this person. This wonderful mensch. Someone who truly was at Zedek, righteous. Who knew about the value of doing good. Above all else. Obligation, duty, love. As we said before, there will most likely never be another Gilbert Hecht in the world. But if we all channeled the best parts of Gilbert Hecht just a little bit in our own lives, that would certainly be a better world in which to live. It is our hope and our prayer that Gilbert's pain and suffering have come to an end and that he is at peace. May he rest in peace. I'd like to call Albert forward to begin the eulogy portion of our service with words from the family.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Matthew Leibel. And thank you for doing the eulogy for me. What I'm about to say sort of mimics the rabbi's version, so I'm going to probably skip a few lines because it's almost the same as my eulogy, Rabbi. So thanks for doing most of this. Hi, my name is Albert Yanofsky, Gilbert's nephew. I will share some of my memories of Uncle Mojo. I will also speak on behalf of my brother Arnold and sister Deborah. Some people say, why did Gilbert have the nickname Mojo? Well, we believe that it was actually his co-workers at the Shaarey that bestowed upon him that nickname because he always brought Mojo candies to work and he shared them with everyone. As the rabbi said, Gilbert was a bit of a trickster and he often did things at work just to stir things up and make people laugh. And the rabbi said he was definitely not boring. Our Uncle Mojo was truly one of a kind. He was our special uncle who actually wanted to become a teacher. And in a way, he did teach us a lot. He was caring and creative, generous, funny. The word stubborn is going to come through many times. Outgoing probably doesn't describe it. But for the most part, he was not shy. He loved his entire family very much, and he adored his great nieces and great nephews. I remember when Lisa and Chris and Faye Ray joined our family. Every phone call with me, he was always asking about these new members of our family. Because that's what Gilbert loved. He loved people, and when our family grew, he loved the extra people that joined us. During the last 3 years, Uncle Mojo absolutely cherished his great-great-nephews and his great-great-nieces. He often said that he could just eat them to pieces. Uncle Mojo had a remarkable and close relationship with his sister Vivian of blessed memory, his nephews, myself and Arnold, his niece Deborah, and especially his sister-in-law Roz. My friend Arthur Chapman reminded me, and so did you, Rabbi, my friend Arthur Chapman reminded me that Gilbert was our cool Menshadika uncle. Those were his words. Who came to visit our family on Sweetwood Bay, as the rabbi said, on his Suzuki Hustler motorcycle with his biker leather jacket in the mid-60s and 70s. Literally, our entire street was awed by his distinct appearance. And as the rabbi said, some of you may even remember him driving his eccentric orange 65 Galaxy 500 throughout Garden City and the rest of the Peg. Who drives such a remarkable, one-of-a-kind car like that? It's our one-of-a-kind Uncle Mojo. Apparently, and I can't quite remember, but I did borrow his unique orange car a few times to take a date to a dancer party. I'm not too sure if my dates were impressed with the orange color, but I am very sure that it left them with that vivid memory. I'm not sure if I went on too many more dates after either, but... Elisa Hecht, his niece, my cousin, told me the other day with a big laugh that she recalls Uncle Mojo, or she recalled that Uncle Mojo used to refer to her as his verbal sparring partner. And as we've said a few times, boring he was not. As the rabbi said, Gilbert was definitely a collector, a historian, an adventurer, a babysitter extraordinaire, food lover, traveler, and of course he loved sports. As the good rabbi said, Gilbert received a distinguished 20-year service award in the year 2000 from the CRA, and it was that year that his younger brother, Manuel, passed away. Gilbert was devastated by this passing. This tragedy no doubt had an impact on the next 23 years of his life. We remember fondly the hundreds of yummy and warm Shabbos family dinners at Baba Yetta's house on 127 Cathedral. The whole mishpacha gathered there. Gilbert and I often fought over who got more pieces of those mouth-watering handmade apple pies. Seldom did I win. This Shabbos and Jewish holiday tradition then continued at our mom and dad's place on 26 Sweetwood Bay. Not only was Uncle Gilbert always there, but he actually also enjoyed celebrating every single birthday party that we had. He valued family a lot and appreciated all the home-cooked food that he could get. And he got quite a bit. I was absolutely fascinated by his locked, secret, private room in his basement, as the rabbi said. I'm not sure exactly, Michael, how I was finally able to break the code on the lock, or maybe you gave me the combination, I'm not sure, but I didn't ask him to go in the room. I just made sure he wasn't around when I got in. It was a frickin' collector's paradise. You name it, he had it. I'm not going to mention all this stuff, but there were shrunken heads and lava lamps, all kinds of stuff to joke around with, fireworks and carvings galore. It was an Uncle Gilbert's, believe it or not, oddity museum. Who would need to go to Ripley's after that? Uncle Mojo had a collection, as we've heard today, of hundreds of books, and also an incredible record collection as well. He had a fascination of lovebirds and parakeets, and they eventually took over the living room for many years. I don't think my Baba Yetta was impressed, but Gilbert never missed an opportunity to explore different communities, countries, museums, and often went on car trips with us, nephews and nieces, to explore or to visit us at Camp Masad or Gimli, a summer stomping ground, especially in the 60s and early 70s. I personally will never forget the summer of 1976, or maybe I'm out by a couple years, when I worked as a counselor at an international camp at Lake Brereton. Believe it or not, Uncle Gilbert got me the job, and he was the supervisor of 6 counselors, 6 young counselors, and he wasn't that old either. Uncle Mojo sang camp songs, chopped wood for the campfires, and believe it or not, went canoeing weekly on Lake Winnipeg. I recall, I didn't really see it, but that's what he told me, that he went canoeing several kilometers on the lake to a nearby island to impress one of the lady campers there. I was not so brave. Gilbert took his collection passion to the highest level. This collection even included many different kinds of candies, not just Mojos. Sharon, now I know where I got this desire or gusto for collecting things. It wasn't my fault. He taught me how to do it. He was my teacher. What better teacher can you get? I often remember asking our cousin John King what he would suggest to sort of organize the garage, but it was Uncle Mojo's fault. I just kept collecting. I guess it was a family tradition. I tried to tell, well, I already said that, sorry. Yes, I did collect books and comics and cars, Sharon, but like I said, it wasn't my fault. Thank you, Uncle Mojo. Even in his last days in palliative care, he shared his thoughtfulness for others by telling me to thank each and every family member if he could not do that, and to tell them that he loved them. And of course, he encouraged all family members to follow their dreams and keep up the great work that they were doing. As the rabbi said, it's almost like a second eulogy. Gilbert always asked whenever he called, before you could ask him how you were doing. He took the time to provide whatever support he could to assist his niece Deborah and nephew Arnold throughout their lives. Family was so important to him. He cared about others, and he practiced this his whole life. It was like part of his mission in life. A true act of kindness and compassion. Gilbert had an art to engage in conversations with strangers. He was curious about people and their lives. If there ever was someone who was a natural at breaking the ice to make people feel comfortable or more comfortable, it was Uncle Mojo. And I think Sharon reminded me that when she joined our family, Gilbert was the absolute perfect person to make her feel welcome. He literally broke the ice. That was our Uncle Mojo. Gilbert gave me advice many, many times, sound advice actually. I should have heeded his wisdom, as he was usually right. He was always there to lend an ear or whatever was needed. Gilbert was an avid movie buff one of his favorites was the film called The Collector, which was actually a horror film. Finally, a few days just before his passing, he wanted me to make sure that he thanked everyone, so most of you here today, and he wanted me to thank them for being a part of his life. Gilbert finally asked me not to make this eulogy too long. I think the rabbi talked about it a bit. And to not repeat things. Well, too bad, Uncle Mojo. I'm not sure if I honored that request, but I did try. You will forever be in our hearts and candy jars. Rest peacefully. We love you too. I'm going to call up my son Aaron. Calling up my daughter Evelyn.
My name is Evelyn, and I am his great niece. Some things, actually, first I'll start. I had been speaking with my son Jackson over the last little bit, and I asked him some things about Uncle Mojo, and today I asked him again some things that he liked about Uncle Mojo, and first thing he said was the baseballs, and I kind of looked at him and he said, the toy baseballs. Uncle Mojo gave him stuffed baseballs. He loved to give Jackson Kit Kat bars, so my 3-year-old loves Kit Kat. He also said lollipops, and one thing that Mojo and him really liked to do is he had a magnetic stick. So Uncle Mojo had a little container of money, so Jackson would throw the money all over the floor and take this magnetic stick and then just collect all the money. He loved doing that every time we went to go see Uncle Mojo. It got a little tricky when my 18-month-old would come over as well, because Jacob would try to eat it. So we had to tell Uncle Mojo only 3 or 4 at a time, just because the coins would be everywhere. Like my dad had said, Uncle Mojo always asked how everybody else was doing. He wanted to make sure that my family was doing good. He always asked how Chris was doing and his family as well. One thing Mojo used to say about the family is that we're very lucky. We're very lucky to have 2 beautiful boys, and they're very lucky to have us. One thing, Uncle Mojo had a sense of humor, and often would say at the end of a conversation, please give Chris a big kiss. And he would also say how Chris is a really good guy. I know Chris didn't want me to mention this, but Mojo was in the hospital a couple years ago, and he made a joke with Chris about how if Chris wanted his apple juice, you can just ask the doctor when you can get apple juice for Chris. So, sorry Chris, I had to mention that. He would always say how he really appreciated how we would call, and Roz would really appreciate all the phone calls, all the times we would bring over the boys. And then when I was talking on the phone with him and we weren't over, he would always say, so when are you coming over next with the boys? And often I would have to say that they're sick and we would have to come once they're feeling better. He really liked to speak on the phone, and often when I was speaking with Auntie Roz, he would interrupt the conversation, but Roz would be understanding and let him talk. Like my dad had mentioned, I took Uncle Mojo to one of my brother's baseball games this past summer, and he didn't mention that it started pouring, and what we ended up doing is Uncle Mojo had his jacket, and we put his jacket over his hood, and we just let him sit in the rain because there was nowhere else for him to go. But he was the only one that was sitting there. Everyone else was hiding underneath trees, but he just sat there with a smile on his face and really enjoyed being there watching Aaron. One thing is that ever since my grandparents passed away, I felt like keeping the relationship with Uncle Mojo and Auntie Roz was super important. I spoke to them regularly, and it was as if he was another grandparent over the last couple of years, always asking how we're doing, how he can help. One thing he asked lately is he knew that we tried dim sum, and I really like dim sum. And he kept asking me over the last month or so, when can I have dim sum? You need to bring me over dim sum. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to bring him any dim sum. But Uncle Mojo, we will make sure that we have dim sum shortly on your behalf. We love you lots and miss you dearly. I will make sure that we continue to tell the boys how much you love them and talk about all the fun things you did with them. We love you.
Hello, my name is Jocelyn. I'm Great Uncle Mojo's niece. And I want to say a poem to him. To my Great Uncle Mojo, you always like to joke around with me. You make me very happy when you're always around. I always enjoy your hugs. I will miss you very much. Take care. I will always think of you.
So I am the last of, I guess I'm the last one to speak here of the great, I guess we'd be great nephews and nieces. So yeah, without repeating some of the stories that have been shared already, just some of the highlights and memories that I have of my Uncle Gilbert, just always being very caring, always similar to what Evelyn was saying, just very, always asking about my family and how everyone's doing, and always telling me just how lucky I am to have such a beautiful wife and kids. I think we still owe you a ride on our dog Popcorn. He often called him a big horse, so I think we owe you a sleigh ride on the dog still. Again, the Mojo candies is sort of a memory from my childhood. I don't think they sell them anymore. I think I tried to look them up recently. Again, the highlight of him coming to my baseball game this past summer, I think it took Evelyn and Uncle Mojo about maybe 20 to 30 minutes to slowly crawl down the first baseline just outside of the ballpark, step by step, push by push, when it typically would take someone who's mobily able about a minute to walk down the sideline there. And he crawled down the sideline and sat behind home plate, and every time I went up to bat, he's rooting for me, and I'd come to see him in between innings. I do remember him just being a constant pillar and always there in our lives growing up, especially at family events. Maybe two more memories. When we were chatting a couple nights ago, and not just a couple nights ago, but he sort of consistently remembered like being with my Baba Vivi in her last moments and holding her hand, and how much that meant to him to be there, and I had taken him there. And maybe just the last sort of memory of him, just he as everyone knows, he's very candid and spoke his mind. So in my last visit with him, he made a request to my dad that his tombstone read, "Oh fuck." And my dad said, "I don't think we'll be able to put that on there," but I think that was pretty much summed up his humor in those two words. So, oh fuck, Gilbert, but I hope you rest in peace, and you will be missed. We love you.
Well, thank you to everyone in the family who spoke, to Albert, and Evelyn, Jocelyn, and Aaron. Fitting tributes for a very deserving man. And now, in honor of Gilbert Hecht, it is my honor to chant the El Malei Rachamim, the traditional Jewish memorial prayer. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bameromim, Amtzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, B'malot Kedoshim Uteorim, Kezohar Arakia Mazirim, En Nishmat Gedalia ben Avraham Halevi Ve'eta Shelach Leolamo Began Dente Menuchato Anabal Harachamim Hasireu Beseter Kenafecha Leolamim Utzror Mitzror Achaim Enishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure to the soul of Gilbert Hecht, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that he find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say together, Amen. A thank you again to everyone for being here, and to those of you who have tuned in. And a special thank you. We had some volunteer pallbearers who stepped up with a tremendous mitzvah. I want to acknowledge them being part of our service as well. The family has asked respectfully that the meal of consolation and the Shiva that they will observe be kept private. But I can tell you that there's never a bad time to reach out with a phone call, a text message, an email, sharing a memory or 2 or 10 of Gilbert and the way he touched your life and made you feel and inspired you. This will help them during these early stages of grief and mourning. So even if you have reached out, continue to reach out to join your hearts together with theirs and give them courage and strength during this difficult time. In a moment, the family will lead us in the closing and very familiar ritual of a Jewish funeral, which is shoveling earth into the grave. This is what we talked about at the beginning, the ultimate form of respect in Jewish tradition, caring for our loved ones until the very end, accompanying them and then burying them with our own hands, hands that once held their hands. Kind, knowing, sorrowful hands. There are different customs in different Jewish communities when it comes to the burial. Most people pour 3 shovelfuls of earth. Some people will use the back of the shovel. Some people will use the front of the shovel. Some people will turn it in between. Some people will pass the shovel to the next person in line, while others will return it to the earth. I always say the custom that you are familiar with, or the ritual that resonates most with you and has meaning for you, is the one you should embrace. It's the way we should approach all rituals, so we can infuse them with meaning and not just something that helps us during a difficult time, but something that can give us a very special feeling, because that's what shoveling the earth is. It's a mitzvah, a selfless act we do without any hope of reward to care for someone until the end, someone who meant so much to many people. It can be painful. It can be a painful act, but we remind ourselves it's born of love and compassion. There are shovels on both sides. As it is a slick day, I always tell people to just be careful around the gravesite. And if you don't want to use a shovel, but you want to perform the mitzvah, I'm pointing right here, there's a bucket, a pail that has a small shovel inside that you can use, and you can pour 3 shovelfuls of dirt just the same way to participate in honoring Gilbert. We will do the shoveling after we recite the Mourner's Kaddish. In introduction to that Mourner's Kaddish, all I can say is the words of Job, the epitome of suffering in Jewish tradition we invoke at funerals. Adonai Natan v'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mivorach. God gives, God takes, blessed be the name of God. May Gilbert Hecht and his memory be a blessing, as we mark that his essence will never leave the hearts and lives that he touched. The Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabah, be'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'galal v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabah mevorach le'alam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemei dekudsha berichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama Rabah min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, huya aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates peace and harmony on high bring peace and harmony to us, to all Israel and all humanity. And together again we say, Amen. To the family we offer these words of tradition. Hamacham yinachem etchem b'toch sha'arav elei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May you be comforted and consoled. May God comfort and console you among all those who are or who have ever been in mourning in our community. Thank you again to everyone who has been with us. I now invite the family to come forward and to lead us in the closing ritual.